In this video today, I want to do something relatively simple, and I say relatively because you could make this dish as complicated or as simple as you like. The simple way is to buy penne pasta and cook it according to package directions. I'm going to make my own pasta from scratch for a couple of reasons. One is I think it's fun, and the other is it'll give me a chance to make some garganelli again, which I haven't made in a long time. This is a simple dish of pasta with chicken, and the real charm of this dish is in the sauce. Learn to make some good sauces, and the culinary world is your oyster. I'm going to start off with a velouté sauce, which is a mother sauce. In and of itself, it's not really a sauce. It's a starting point from which you can add other ingredients to make more complex sauce. I'm going to add caramelized onion with a little bit of garlic and some sliced mushrooms. You could add some shallot if you have it. There's a lot of things you can do with a velouté sauce to make it into a complex sauce. I'm going to use mine to make a mushroom sauce. So let's make this chicken and pasta with mushroom sauce. I'm going to make enough pasta here for 4 people. In a dish like this, I figure 1 egg for 2 people per serving. So I have 2 large eggs here. And then a pinch of salt. You always put salt in fresh pasta. And then I want to mix this up a little bit. All right. Then I have here 2 different kinds of flour. This is all-purpose flour, half a cup, which is about 77 grams, and this is durum wheat semolina or pasta flour, again half a cup, that's about 96 grams. I know I need about a half a cup each when I work with large eggs. It all depends on how big your eggs are. In some countries, large eggs are bigger, and some they're smaller. I usually start with a half a cup total flour for each egg. And then as I bring it together into a dough, I'll add more flour as I need to get the consistency that I want. I want a fairly dry dough that's easy to knead. I've got that about as joined together as I can, so I'm just going to dust it with some flour. Take it off my fork here, and then I have a flour duster here that I use for making pasta. I'm just going to knead this, and if I have to add more flour, I have my flour containers on the side, and this is going to need a little bit more flour. So I'm going to get this out of the bowl and then start adding some flour here. Pinch each at a time until I get the consistency that I want. Okay, so I think my pasta dough here is nicely come together. I'm going to wrap this in plastic and let this sit for a while. I'm actually going to freeze this. It's best to let pasta dough sit for a few hours. Sometimes I make it a day in advance and put it in the refrigerator overnight. That gives the flour in there a chance to absorb moisture, and it'll be smoother and easier to work with. I took out of the freezer a piece of pasta dough yesterday. It's been thawing in the refrigerator. I'm going to work with this because this has already been sitting for quite a while. Let's take a moment to talk about velouté, which is nothing more than chicken stock thickened with a roux. You can buy the broth that they have in the store. I make my own chicken stock because it's more economical and I can make it the way I like it. I always buy whole chickens, and then I fillet off the meat that I want. The wings, the bones, the skin, all the trim goes into the freezer, and when I have enough, I make a big pot of chicken stock. I freeze it in these little Ziploc plastic containers and then store it like this in the freezer. Pop the ice out of those containers, put it in a Ziploc bag. I can make a couple of these bags each time I make stock. It's a lot of work making stock, but you do it one time and then you keep it in the freezer, and this will last me for 2 or 3 months before I have to make stock again. So I need to start making my roux. What I have here is 1.5 ounces of butter. I'm using clarified butter. And then I have 1.5 ounces of all-purpose flour. I do things by weight because it's just easy. I know for 2 cups of stock, which is what I've got melting, I know I need 1.5 ounces each of those 2 ingredients. The flour, if you want to do things volumetrically, is 5 tablespoons. The butter is 3.5 tablespoons, roughly. And then what I want to do here is cook my flour in the butter for about a minute, just so I don't have that raw flour flavor. So my flour now is cooked for about a minute. This is my 2 cups of stock. And what is that, about 475 milliliters of stock. I'm going to bring my heat back up under this. I want to bring this to a boil, and that will thicken the stock into a simple velouté. That's all this is. Turning my heat off now because this has just come up to a boil. You can see how nicely that has thickened. It's perfect. I'm going to put a cover on this and set this aside while I do my onions and mushrooms. I've got a large onion here, fairly large, that I'm going to peel and chop up. I'm not going to do a fine chop at all because I'm looking for a certain texture. So I got my onion peeled there. What I want is like short strings of onion in my dish. So I'm going to just cut down once through and then cut across. And what I'll end up with is these longer pieces of onion rather than chopped or minced onion. And I think that'll add a more interesting texture to my dish. So that was 1 whole onion, and I need about 6 or 8 mushrooms depending upon size. I had to make an extra trip to the store to buy these. I bought the package of mushrooms at Costco, and there were a few on top that looked good, but underneath they were all brown and rotten. I'll look for my receipt and take them back. It's always better to buy mushrooms at the grocery store where you can actually see them all and pick out the ones you like best. I've got a skillet heating on the stove here. I'm going to put a 3 tablespoons of cooking olive oil in there. That's not extra virgin olive oil. There go my onions. This is the longest of the cooking times right here because I want to caramelize these onions. So I'm going to start at medium-high heat, and as the moisture cooks off of these, I'll start reducing my heat because I want to get them lightly browned. Actually, kind of a golden brown, and that's probably going to take 10 to 15 minutes. So there are my onions. You can see how golden they are now. That actually took 20 minutes. I wanted them to have a nice golden color. Before I finish them, I'm putting in 3 cloves of garlic that I minced. You need 2 to 4 depending upon size. And I want to cook this for just 1 additional minute just to cook that garlic. Then I'm going to transfer this out of the pan and start sauteing my mushrooms. I return my pan to the heat. I want to put in a good dollop of butter. I'm using whole butter now because I don't have to worry about smoke point. I'm just going to saute the mushrooms, which will cook in 2 to 3 minutes. They don't need to be browned. They just need to be cooked until they're tender. My mushrooms are nicely tender. I'm going to add my onion and garlic back to this pan. And here is my velouté. Beautiful. And I know that's going to need salt. You notice I haven't used any herbs. You can if you want to. Oregano might be good in this. I am going to grind some pepper in there. And then I'm going to add a good pinch of salt because I always make my stock without salt. Beautiful. Just look at that. All right, I'm going to turn my heat off under that. I'm finishing up rolling my pasta dough through my machine here. And on my machine, I have an Atlas. I roll to number 5 on the dial for this kind of pasta. And then I can start trimming this off. And then I'll show you how I'm going to roll garganelli. All right, how to shape garganelli. I'm going to trim my edges off here. Those scraps, by the way, you can cut these little scraps up, put them in the freezer, that's what I do, and use them for soups. And then let's see, how big do I want my garganelli? I'm going to cut this into 4 strips, I think, by cutting down the middle, like so. And then to shape a garganelli, you want little squares. Those are closer to rectangles, but that's all right. So to shape a garganelli, you want to roll it corner to corner around something like a dowel. Put a little bit of water on the last corner, roll it, slide it off, and you have this tube like that. And that's why a penne would work well. Another thing you can do is if you've got a little butter board like I have here, this has ridges on it. Same thing, a little bit of water on the final corner, and then roll it across the butter board, and you put little ridges in it, and now you have a garganelli rigate. So I need a lot of time here now to roll all of these. This is where it's time consuming because you roll one at a time, get your family and friends involved, and then have them over for dinner. So there are my garganelli. I did about half that pasta that I made earlier. This is enough for 2 servings, maybe 3. This is just enough for a demonstration. And then what I did in the meantime is I cut up some chicken. This is a couple of chicken thighs. I'm going to start sauteing these and then put the sauce in right when my pasta is ready to go in because the pasta will cook in a minute. I've got my skillet heating again. I cleaned this skillet out. Again, I'm going to put some cooking olive oil in there and my chicken. Meanwhile, my water is just coming up to the boil. I just want to cook this chicken until it's thoroughly cooked. I don't need to brown it. I just put my pasta in. So I want to put some of my velouté in there, my mushroom and onions. A little bit more, I think. All right, and then bring this back up to temperature because that sauce has had time to cool down a little bit. As soon as my pasta is done, I'll be ready to plate and see what it tastes like. So here is my garganelli now, all cooked. I might as well put all of it in there. Like I said, I didn't make the full amount of pasta. And then I got plenty of sauce, so I'm going to save some of this for later. Put my sauce over the top. That's plenty. And then you could dress that up with cheese if you want, but I think it's a little bit better with a little bit of chopped fresh parsley on there. I don't like to put cheese on everything. All right, the next step is to see how good this tastes. So there it is. I'm excited, and I've made this several times, but I think this is going to be one of the best times I've ever made this dish. A nice al dente pasta. The chicken is delicious with the mushrooms and the onions. That is very good. So excuse me, I'm going to go enjoy a late lunch of chicken and pasta with mushroom velouté sauce. For a printable PDF copy of this recipe with step-by-step photographs, visit my website, mobilehomegourmet.com, and look on the home page or in the recipe archive.